Hello everyone, it is I, Ichabod Bartholomew Kroger. You may have noticed I haven't reviewed any of the 5 albums that came out with the good music thing that happened. Yeah, I'm talking about them all fucking here. Pusha T's Daytona, Kanye West's Yay, Kid Cudi and Kanye's collaborative album K.T.S.E Ghosts, Nas's Nasir, and Teyana Taylor's Keep That Same Energy, or just K.T.S.E for short. Alright, we all know who Kanye West is, and we all know why he's famous. He's famous because Playboy Carti shouted him out on Mileage, you know, skyrocketed his career, you know, he blew up after that. You know, he's made some decent music as well, it's worth mentioning, he's alright, you know, he's got some albums and stuff, you know, he's no Playboy Carti or anything. In this video, I'm going to be giving my thoughts on all of these albums. If you're interested, then yeah, get some popcorn, grab some snacks, enjoy the show. I was also considering maybe covering Designer's L.O.D. as well, because that's also like a 7-track good music thing, but like, who fucking cares about Designer? I'm going to be chronologically reviewing these albums, by the way, from Daytona all the way to K.T.S.E, and at the very end of the video, I will rank them and score them and all that good shit, but yeah, without further ado, let's just get into fucking Daytona. So Daytona by Pusha T was the first one to release out of all of these Kanye-produced good music albums, and from what I've personally been able to gather, it appears to be the fan favorite. Just based strictly off of what I've personally seen on social media and whatnot, Daytona seems to be considered the strongest of all of the albums that came out, and it's not difficult to understand why. I mean, if you just look at the raw quality of the songs here, it's difficult to really poke many glaring holes in Daytona, in my opinion. Like, production-wise, it all feels very grimy, blunt, direct, sample-heavy, cold-blooded, very focused. The no BS approach that Kanye took to all these beats went over wonderfully, in my opinion. The sound of this thing is often kind of rugged and clunky, but I think that's intentionally so. They all fit Pusha T's very effortlessly confident approach to rapping scarily comfortably. You can almost feel the chemistry between Pusha and Kanye in these tracks. The sample choices provided by Kanye are often very intelligent and artful, in my opinion. Pusha T is incredibly vivid, detailed, occasionally very lavish, but often nightmarish descriptions and depictions of the drug hustling lifestyle really nicely coincides with what Kanye accomplishes on this album instrumentally. I think both of these worlds blend really nicely. Like Pusha T, the way he handles these dark, gritty, drug-infested themes on this album. I think he does a great job of balancing both the hyper-realistic, braggadocious, glorified side of being a drug peddler, whilst also managing to outline the grounded in reality issues that you'd have no option but to face when succumbed to the seedy, crime-ridden lifestyle. There are tons of quotables in every track here. A few standouts include the Big Meech brought the tigers in line from the opener, the rapper turned trapper can't morph into us, but a trapper turned rapper can morph into Puff. That was fucking wonderful. Love the way he kicked off Games We Play, as well with that line about how none of what he says is part of a phase or a trend, how this lifestyle will always stick with you forever, like nothing he says is just for show, because he's aware that, you know, trends always eventually die, so why would he fake it? The bars on Infrared he brings about how he's exposed others and been exposed, but only managed to grow from it, are really nice too, and they have aged pretty well, especially considering what happened with the whole Drake thing. Enjoyed that Will Smith bar he had on that one as well. The Never Fall in Love with Someone Who Finds Love in a Camera, and the Matt Lauer line as well on Hard Piano were both pretty great. Like, there were some cool lyrical nuggets and lyrical gems front to back on this thing that had me like, whoa, that was a cool bar, bro. Like, the rapping on this album, it's pretty solid. You know, from a technical standpoint, there's not really much I would say is bad. I guess he maybe reuses the same flow a little bit, but outside of that, I think his rapping is pretty decent. Production-wise, too, I think this album does a great job of building the dark, gritty, drug-infested world that this album seems to so comfortably exist within. So there's not really much for me to complain about there. The raw quality of this album, it's pretty hard to deny. Like, the songs are fucking there. But with that being said, I don't love this album, really. I thought I did when it first came out, but as time has progressed and I've listened to this thing like dozens of times at this point, I just started to note how I really wasn't connecting with this experience in the same way I really wanted to believe I was. The experience this album offered me just wasn't strong enough for me to call it an album that I really love. You know, it took me a while to realize, but the reason why this was the case is because the beats, whilst they are pretty exciting, they're frequently very artful. There are some nice, very intelligent progressions in certain songs, especially Santeria and Comeback Baby. There's a really cool switch up on Santeria and the way that kind of shifts the tone in a pretty seamless way. Like, the production here is solid. It's exciting and I like it a lot. And Pusha T's rapping, again, it's entertaining. But ultimately, I think Daytona suffers from being a painfully uncreative album. It just feels like Pusha T, this album feels to me like Pusha T was working on this album and he was like, okay, I want to have one really great song on this album, all about peddling coke. and drug hustling and shit. I'm gonna have one song on this album, and that's what it's gonna be about, and it's gonna be fucking great. So he was like, okay, I'm gonna write a bunch of coke peddling songs, I'm gonna pick the best one, and I'm gonna put it on the album, and that's gonna be the drug peddling song of the album, you know? So he spent like the next few days writing like 20 plus different coke fucking songs, and this album sounds like instead of just continuing that album, he just picked the 7 best ones out of the 20 coke songs he wrote and just made that the album instead. I really just don't get an experience from this album at all. It just kind of boils down to a series of quick thrills of me going, whoa, that was a cool line, or whoa, that beat's pretty cool, or whoa, that progression in the song during the second half of Santeria, that was really cool. Like it's fun, but it doesn't really stick with me in a significant enough way for me to comfortably say that I loved this album. And with it only being 21 minutes long, and the fact that you spent like 95% of that time talking about coke, I don't know about you, but it hardly really leaves much of a big impression on me, no matter how well you execute it. And it doesn't really sound like Pusha T was really striving to execute it in any significantly, you know, dazzling way. You know, and by the time I was the most immersed in this album was by the time it was finished. It ended right when I was the most engrossed in this dark, druggy atmosphere that the album does a really solid job of developing, but the songs never really explored any of this territory to its fullest effect, I don't think. The song lengths here are pretty short as well. 21 minutes, 7 tracks, very brief lengths. Like, I mean, this isn't a problem. There's nothing really wrong with having a short album, but I just feel like the way that time was used didn't leave me completely fulfilled. I had a lot of fun with it. I'd gladly return to some of these tracks, particularly these ones, but that's about as far as I would go, really. I would hesitate to say that I loved the time I spent with this album, but it was entertaining. So that's about everything I have to say on Daytona. Let's move on to Kanye West's Ye.
Believe it or not. Believe it or not.
So this is pretty easily the most divisive out of all of the albums that I'll be discussing in this video. It's very polarizing, primarily because Kanye decided to opt for a more raw and undignified approach to both the overall sound and the lyrical content of this album. It all feels intentionally very loose and sloppy. Everything sounds like it's on the verge of collapsing on this album, which makes perfect sense because it allows Kanye to present himself in a much more vulnerable state than what we're used to. This album feels brittle, and it deals with themes of mental health, as well as the tolls that fame can have on you. In a lot of ways, you could argue that Kanye showing us himself in a more damaged state has given us a more compelling listen by offering something that's a little bit more human and real and grounded than what we've seen on his last handful of albums, particularly with stuff like Yeezus, you know, which is very kind of egotistic and narcissistic and whatnot. And I can understand that perspective, that you would gravitate more towards Ye because it is more grounded in realism or whatever. It's more personal and introspective, but personally, I found Ye to be one of the most mediocre, lazily thrown together shit shows I've listened to all year. This album sucked, in my opinion. The opening track actually exemplifies many of my problems I have with this album. In fact, I would actually argue that this first song is one of the worst in Kanye's entire discography. Like, I mean, obviously RoboCop is still the worst, but I Thought About Killing You begins with a painfully fake woke spoken word diatribe at the beginning that makes my eyes roll every fucking time I hear it. He's basically just talking about how he secretly thinks Revival is like a 10 out of 10 and all the trouble he's gone through trying to keep that a secret. And I can definitely relate to that. Oh fuck, oh wait, no, that's not the... Oh yeah, he talked about suicide, and I think he talks about what I perceive to be him battling his own psyche or his ego by personifying them as a separate individual entirely, tying into the whole bipolar disorder that's referenced on the cover of the album. And I think it's cool how he's displaying himself so boldly in such a raw and emotional state at the very start of the album. Like, that's cool, but some of the various ramblings he goes on quickly becomes insufferable to listen to, in my opinion. And the instrumental that plays is very lazy as well. It's just a few little drones alongside these auto-tuned vocal passages just kind of looping and cycling throughout the entire spoken word piece. It's not exactly very creative or gripping, it's just kind of shit. And then Kanye starts rapping, and we easily get probably his laziest flow on the whole album. It sounds so obnoxious. He doesn't have one single memorable line at all in this first verse, and the beat switches up again out of nowhere, and the final beat on this track is a total fucking train wreck. Oh my god. It sounds horrid. It sounds absolutely terrible. There's no weight or punch to this. The final beat on this first track, it has no ferocity or weight or anything. It has some really awkward sample and sound effect choices too that I just could not get behind. And yeah, it doesn't help that on top of this fucking terrible beat, we have more obnoxious Kanye rapping, generic filler lines like these, this stupid fucking line. Like, Kanye has no sense of attitude or character or anything here either, so that doesn't excuse these fucking bad lines. Like, normally he'll at least pull them off in some charismatic way or something, but he just sounds flat as fuck to me on this song. Just overall, this opening track is a complete fucking flop. It's honestly hilarious. Like, really, I just could not get anything from it. And that's the thing, actually. Most of these instrumentals are absolute nightmares. Like, the beat on the song wouldn't leave. Pairs up some really cheap sounding kicks, with these dime a dozen piano chords. There are various twinkly sound effects as well, just scattered throughout the track that sound completely out of place and awkward to me. It really feels like it's trying way too hard to shoot for like a really uplifting and inspiring tone, but the execution just feels completely unsatisfying. Yikes is probably my least favorite beat on the whole album. The flat 808s on this track sound like fucking garbage, and the incessantly repeating sample that loops up the whole song gets really old really quick for me. And he rapped with absolutely no conviction or strong presence on this track either. That's the thing for this whole fucking album. Kanye on this album just feels like the person rapping, but never Kanye. He never once, maybe with the exception of like 1 or 2 verses, he never once left any significant mark on me with any of his performances on any of these tracks. And the only time I think where his performance actually carried like some weight was probably on the final track, Violent Crimes. His verse on this song sounded pretty genuine. His performance was genuinely somewhat emotive and captivating. It's just kind of a shame he had to rap about how it took him having a daughter to realize he should respect women. Like, yeah, the lyrics on this cut are a bit questionable, but still, I guess his performance wasn't too bad. All Mine is an absolute disaster of a song, but I actually kind of find this one weirdly enjoyable. The infamous lines on this song about titties and, you know, we'll never be here without cum, and the focus on 2 things at once, like, they're pretty silly, they're pretty goofy, and I mean, yeah. Like, dude, like, that's not the reason you love her titties. Like, and that doesn't prove you can focus on 2 things at once. Well, the beat on this track is such a colossal mess, it's honestly kind of funny. Like, the weird scraping sound effects that just awkwardly pierce through at the end of the track are just ridiculous, and the rest of the song is just so skeletal. It's mostly just straight up just flat 808s and a snare. Like, what the fuck is this track? It's just really weird. But I kind of like it in its eccentricity in a weird way, and Kanye's rapping isn't, you know, the worst, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, No Mistakes is probably my favorite on this album. It's on the shorter side, unfortunately, but Kanye does sound somewhat energized here, and the soul samples he flips sound pretty slick. Ghost Town isn't too bad. Kanye's singing is okay. The 070 Shake refrain at the end about feeling free and testing your tolerance for pain and realizing you don't feel it anymore, which I think might be a metaphor for the effects of mental health and whatnot. I thought that was quite poignant, and she performed it with a lot of gusto and passion. Shout out to Ray Delay. It's also probably the catchiest part of the whole album too. That shit got on my head pretty fucking firmly. That's the thing. There's not really many good catchy hooks on this album. So that 070 Shake part on Ghost Town, I thought that was something this album really needed, because it was a genuinely pretty sticky refrain that had me humming along to it and shit, you know, when I wasn't listening to this album. So that's something pretty cool, I guess. But yeah, overall, this thing was not that entertaining at all to me, and when viewed as like a deep, fragmented look into Kanye West's troubled psyche, I don't think it really satisfies in that regard either. It's not really as compelling or as personal in order for me to really gravitate towards it, I guess. Like Kanye, again, his vocal presence is barely here at all. His performances don't really reel me in. I just don't think this album sounds finished at all. Apparently it was made in like a month as well. Like right after the TMZ thing happened, like apparently he just remade the whole album or some shit. So yeah, that totally shows. This thing is a really shoddy effort, and I'd personally consider it to be a total failure. Probably my least favorite, or my second least favorite Kanye album. It's between that or 808s, but yeah, that's everything. So let's move on and talk about K.T.S.E. G.O.O.D. Oh my god, this video is killing me. This video is fucking killing me. I am dying. If you want to know why I'm dying and why this video is killing me, here you go. It has been difficult. Jesus. Okay, let's just fucking do this. Alright, K.T.S.E. Ghosts is a fantastic album. Yeah, woohoo. Fucking yay. This album's great. Big fan of this one. I think it's a absolutely gorgeous, hopeful, nuanced, dynamic, and inspiring rap album. I think it showcases and displays the various strengths of both Kanye West and Kid Cudi as vocalists and musicians and whatnot. Creatively, I think this is just a really adventurous and exciting and pretty cutting edge and slightly experimental rap album that I think paid off really nicely. The opening track, Feel the Love, accomplishes pretty much everything I could ever really hope from an intro track. The pace and structure of the song both do a phenomenal job at setting a resonant tone, letting you know right out the gate they're in for something unique and creative. Pusha T kicks things off with this very kind of ominous quietness as he delivers a very subtle but still provocative verse on top of these really haunting synth chords, and then K.T.E just bursts through with an irresistible amount of raw motivational energy with this infectious feel the love hook he repeats throughout the song. But my personal favorite part of this track has to be Kanye shouting himself. He steals the fucking show in my opinion. His insane vocal shrieks are performed with so much ferocity and energy. It gives the song an undeniable sense of urgency that just leaves me completely breathless on every listen. There's one thing that this song does, it's set a fucking tone and establish a character. That's the main thing I love about K.T.E Ghost, you know? Every track here I think has a pretty distinct personality. It does more in its 23-minute runtime than some albums do in fucking 50 minutes. I think the only track you could maybe potentially view as somewhat inessential or filler would probably be the track Fire, track 2, mainly because of its very brief length. It's only like 2 minutes 20 seconds long. It doesn't really quite manage to thrill me or build much of an identity in the same way the other tracks do in my opinion, but it is still an enjoyable song, mostly thanks to two very entertaining verses from K.T.E and Kanye. I loved K.T.E's lines on this song about how his belief in God has sort of helped him persevere through his ongoing battle with mental demons and whatnot, and how that's led to him being able to provide better lives for not only himself, but the people he cares for the most around him too. It's a really inspiring and hopeful verse, and the way he ended it all off with a beautiful madness was a nice little thematic roundup to everything he just said on the verse too. The beat isn't bad. I think it's definitely the least fruitful beat on the album though, but with that being said, still, the marching drums on this track come off really confrontational and intimidating. It sounds like fucking 400 Borderlands 2 loaders all marching to execute Handsome Jack's world domination plan or some shit. It's not really quite as explosive as, say, songs like Free. I think Free is easily the most bombastic track on the album. It's pretty much the album's grand centerpiece, and I also completely agree with David Rowe that only giving the title 4 E's. Are you fucking serious? That's such a cop-out. It does not do it justice whatsoever. Yeah, whatever, who fucking cares? Anyway, on this track we hear Kanye West, Kid Cudi, and of course the one and only T.I.E. All of which are pridefully expressing their collective joy to at last feel completely free of all the pain that after many years of unrelenting torment from dealing with mental stress and all their obstacles and various physical struggles they've been through to get to the point they're at now, at least that's kind of how I'm taking it. They're just embracing their freedom from all of this struggle and on this track and just letting it all out. And it's a wonderfully inspiring and hopeful moment on the album that just invigorates me with motivation every time I hear it. The vocals from everyone here are just filled with life, character, and passion. It's just so hard for me not to feel inspired when I hear this track. And the instrumental is just massive on this song. The guitar strokes on this thing are absolutely throttling. I love the samples here. The descending organ thing that kind of pops in sporadically throughout the track is a really nice touch that I dig a lot. It manages to build such a monumental wall of sound, and I think it fits so perfectly with how passionately everyone on the track is performing too. That being said though, my favorite track on this album has got to be Fourth Dimension. Holy shit, everything about this track is just executed amazingly, pulled off without a hitch. It's easily my favorite song. First off, I have to praise Kanye on this track. He gives such a great verse with fucking a couple of fantastic quotables in particular. I love, of course, we have the Rick Ross Master P line, which always just has me grinning. And the way he ends off that verse too with the finish the sentence thing he did, that was just really entertaining to me. And the instrumental features some really wonderful touches too. It's from the really warped and haunting vocal sample that plays throughout the track, which adds a lot to the song's kind of twisted tone. The oppressive, slumberous drums also contribute towards this too, and I fucking love that part. After Kanye's verse, there's this like evil, manic laughter that kind of pierces through, and it makes the song really briefly for a minute just feel super like intense and creepy. The way it comes in always just gives me chills, and it just seamlessly transitions into K.T.E.'s verse too. I think it's one of the more artful moments, just a small moment that I really appreciate from K.T.E Ghost. But with that being said though, the fucking show stealer on this track is Kid fucking Cudi. He steals this song. He just comes through like the true blue plug. He just comes through on this track like the plug he fucking is, man. One of the most cold-blooded and heartless and fearsome performances, honestly, probably of his whole career. Like, every time I hear him come in on this beat, I just get fucking amped up. And the weird thing is, too, he doesn't really sound super hype or anything on this track. His voice is quite monotone, quite unexpressive, but that just adds to how fucking heartless and evil he sounds. His voice, it just works so perfectly on this particular instrumental. Since, again, like I said earlier, with the manic laughter and all that, and the slumberous drums, this song just has a really twisted undertone to it, and hearing K.T.E just rap on this track in the way he does, it just fits so perfectly. He sounds so provocative to me here, and that Ric Flair line, oh my god, that's probably the biggest smile I get on this whole album, honestly. Fucking always makes me grin when I hear that shit. There's also Reborn, which actually shows K.T.E and Ye at their most vulnerable on this whole album. My only gripe with this track would have to be with Kanye's verse. Not that I have an issue with the verse itself, necessarily, it's just like his voice, the way it's like recorded is kind of fun. Like everything he says on the verse actually resonated with me quite a lot. His determination to persevere through anything is really evident and well presented through both his lyrics and his performance as well. But yeah, why the fuck does it sound like his verse was recorded inside the case for Batman Arkham Asylum on PS3? His voice just has this weird like tinny filter on it, which is just really annoying. Really annoyingly noticeable in my opinion. I'm struggling to think of any like justifiable reason for it being there. Like, is it to make him sound more vulnerable or something? Because it doesn't really do that in my opinion. If that is the case, like, his performance is just so confident. I don't really get much of a sense of pain through his voice. It's just a fucking distracting thing about the verse. The only thing I dislike about the track really. But outside of that, the song is pretty lovely and probably the most inspirational and gorgeous song here. The main thing I want to talk about though is the ending of the song, the last few minutes, which is actually a big complaint I've seen people have with the track, is that it goes on for way too long and you know, it just outstays its welcome a little bit. And I hear where that complaint stems from, because I used to be on that side at first, but after hearing this album at this point, what, fucking dozens of times at this point, I couldn't disagree more. I actually think the length is perfect. I think the last 2 minutes of this song was really necessary. Basically what happens in the last 2 minutes is K.T.S.E is essentially repeating this hook, which reads I am so reborn, I'm moving forward, keep moving forward, keep moving forward. Ain't no stress on me, Lord, I'm moving forward, keep moving forward, keep moving forward. He repeats that for like 2 minutes. And people are like, man, it just gets really played out and repetitive. You're just saying the same thing over and over again, and it goes on for too long, and it's boring, and blah, blah, blah. Okay, I get it, but like, I think there is more purpose to it than just for the sake of like extending the song length or something. Because if you listen to K.T.S.E's voice, as he continues to recite this hook again and again, his voice kind of becomes auto-tuned more and more. It almost sounds like he's fatiguing more and more as he's saying it too, which I think has a lot of purpose behind it. He's telling himself to keep moving forward, reminding himself to fight through everything and stay strong and always have hope, even during the darkest of times. But through the use of auto-tune and his continuously depleting performance on this track, it's almost as if we're hearing K.T.S.E's gradual descent into submission, and by having K.T.S.E's voice slowly wither away during this outro, we're sort of like hearing in real time the toll all of this is taking on him. But despite all of it, he's continuously telling himself to keep moving forward, you know, and I think the fact that it goes on for as long as it does just perfectly displays and exemplifies this, making for a really inspiring finish to the track. I actually think this ending is pretty overlooked. I think it's really gorgeous and artful personally, but I get it. That being said, K.T.S.E Ghost, the title track, is easily the song with the most attitude of any of the tracks here, mostly due to the hypnotic, tribal-sounding instrumental that just oozes with fucking style now. And then we have Kanye on this track, who probably, in my opinion, Kanye on the fucking title track of this album, man, he gives probably his best rap performance on anything since Twisted Fantasy came out. It may not be his best verse since Twisted Fantasy, that probably goes to No More Pies in LA, but if we're talking purely the performance, I might have to give it to this one. The amount of charisma and swagger Kanye has on this track is ridiculous. He sounds so effortlessly confident, but also has an undeniably likable charm to him on this track too. It fits the beat scarily perfectly. I love the hook from Mos Def on this track too, very catchy. And then we have K.T.S.E Montage, which is an excellent finish to the album in my opinion. The Kurt Cobain sample is not exactly implemented in any sort of majorly creative way or anything like that, but the tone it creates is really, really nicely reflected by the lyrics in my opinion. I think it reflects the weight of the lyrics on this track quite well. Kanye once again delivers a great verse. I swear to fucking God, every verse he has on this album. I love how he kicked it off with those bars about looking for your own peace, and the way he flipped the word peace in all of those different contexts and meanings was a really nice lyrical stroke of prowess in my opinion. I actually had like a point too, like it wasn't just like a lyrical moment for the sake of being a lyrical moment, you know, there was actually sort of a substantial message there too. Seeing Nice get shot on the dome piece, you know, and then you find your own piece as in like a gun and you use that to find your own piece, and I thought there's actually like a message there, like it's not just lyrical, but like there's actually a point. It's honestly some great rapping. My favorite part of the song is definitely the outro though, because Kanye sung again really vulnerably here, which I liked, and K.T.S.E's really warm and inviting trademark humming sounded better than ever on this track in my opinion as well, and the repeated mantra of stay strong, you know, it leaves things off on a beautifully positive note. A really fulfilling and beautiful conclusion to the stylish, nuanced, creative, and kaleidoscopic hip-hop odyssey that is K.T.S.E fucking Ghost, man. I would love to see more music from these guys in the future, because what came out of it here was hugely entertaining for me as well, and it continues to unravel itself more and more in every listen. I really enjoyed this. One of my favorites of the year, for sure. I think it's fucking awesome. But yeah, moving on to Nasir. Alright, so in direct contrast to the very fruitful, flavorful, and exciting K.T.S.E Ghost, we have Nasir, which is one of the most uninspired and fucking mediocre rap albums of 2018 in my opinion. And also in direct contrast to K.T.S.E Ghost, we're gonna talk about the opening track on this album, because hey, I mean, like I said before, Feel the Love from K.T.S.E Ghost, one of my favorite opening tracks of the fucking year. As I said, you know, it gives me everything I ever look for in an opening track. However, not for radio, from Nasir. This track is probably my least favorite song, not only on this album, but in the entire 5-album rollout. It's everything I don't want in an intro track. In a track period, okay? The mixing on this song is garbage as fuck. The gospel samples are super obnoxious. The hi-hat on this track is fucking revolting. The horns are cheap and shitty. The distorted yelling, the constant just random yelling from Diddy is just annoying as shit. The hook sounds like it. The hook from was it 07 of Shake? Sounds like it was mixed completely differently to anything else in the song. And then Nas himself comes through with some of his most rudimentary and uninspired rapping of his whole fucking career. I found nothing about the song enjoyable or compelling at all. Like, it sounds like it's covered in static as well. That's the thing with, like, every fucking track here. I don't know where Kanye found these samples, but holy fuck, dude. Those were some dusty records, bro, because these tracks sound filthy. They sound like they are just clouded in white noise and dust or something. I mean, Cop Shot the Kid, the next track, is definitely one of the cleaner instrumentals, but unfortunately it does manage to be probably the most grating beat on the album, thanks to the incessant repetition of Slick Rick saying, Cop Shot the Kid, Cop Shot the Kid, Cop. I guess it does have like a certain eeriness to it. Like, I think there is kind of a lot of meaning to the idea of we're hearing this Cop Shot the Kid, this very disturbing phrase being repeated again and again and again, to the point where it just kind of gets diluted into just another element of the song. I think there is poignance in that. However, that does not change the fact that musically, it sounds fucking disgusting. It sounds out of place and uncomfortable as hell, and hearing Nas attempt to rap on it was just painful. Like, especially since it's not like he sounded like he barely keep up with the beat. He sounded like he was tired as fuck or something. Kanye's verse did have a few quotables though, so he was definitely the best part of the track to me. But yeah, Cop Shot the Kid is not a song I see myself returning to anytime soon. But fortunately, that is one of the cleaner instrumentals. I think the whole static thing, I think it's most evident probably on the song Bonjour. I think it's pretty glaring there, because again, the beat on this track, it sounds kind of dirty, it sounds kind of staticky, it sounds like this beat was just found in the fucking sewer or something. The recording quality is just shit. And then there's Nas, who sounds clean as hell, like his voice is mixed in perfectly, so the shitty quality of the beat just sticks out like a sore thumb, and it makes it really hard for me to comfortably enjoy this track. Which is a shame, because Nas, I think, delivers one of his better performances on this song. He actually sounds somewhat energized and jovial at points here, and the hook is sung pretty nicely too. It's just sonically, this track is generally just a train wreck when it comes to the mixing and whatnot. The song Everything, I think, is probably the first sign of genuine ambition on this album. This is the 7-minute long centerpiece of the album, I think, and it features some vocal work as well from The Dream and Kanye West, of course. I actually quite enjoyed the singing from both of them on this track. Kanye's lyrical idea too about the responsibility that comes when you're put in a position where you're able to make a change, or you can change anything, and that responsibility and how much that can weigh on you, and whether or not you should actually take that opportunity. I thought there was definitely an interesting mantra there, and it gave the song quite a hopeful character too, and I thought Nas rapped with quite a bit of bite as well, which is pretty nice, because I think rarely does that happen on this album, so that's pretty cool. And I enjoyed that line he had at the start too, where he says, the media slings mud, and we use it to build hurt. It's a nice moment of determination on the track, which I thought was quite cool. The instrumental too sounded very grandiose. I was not really huge on the drums though, the percussion. They just didn't really have enough weight or drive to them, in my opinion, to carry the very huge sound of this track, you know? Regardless, though, it is definitely one of the album's high points, in my opinion, the song White Label. Definitely a bit more minimal production-wise. I think Nas sounds a little bit more comfortable in this track too. The sample here actually sounds like it has a place existing on the song, which is, you know, good. Unlike fucking Cop Shot the Kid. The lyrics are a bit rambly though on this song, a bit of braggadocio, you know, nothing really hugely compelling content-wise, but the rapping itself is kind of entertaining. I don't know, this song didn't really leave a huge impression on me. It's a bit faceless, but it's definitely not like a bad song. I didn't really find it, you know, hugely despicable or anything. There's also Adam and Eve, which on this track we hear Kanye Nas, we hear Nas, my bad, we hear Nas just kind of go through his daily routine and how it's kind of fatiguing him. And he goes for like a morning walk and has a cigar and cuts the fat off his meat. Bon appetit. Fucking bars right there. Yeah, the content here is not really interesting at all. And I think there was actually like a whole thing about the 7 deadly sins too, or something. Like, you know, apparently each track here represents one of the sins. I think this one might be gluttony, or this one might be sloth or something, like he's getting fatigued or something, and you know, or something like that. I'm not really 100% sure. I don't really care. But yeah, still, this track generally doesn't really interest me. I think it's quite boring. Again, because the content doesn't really do much for me. Nas, ironically, doesn't really seem to have a lick of hunger on this track, despite him talking about, you know, cutting the fat off his meat and shit. The piano sample on this track is just bland as fuck to me. And again, the beat just sounds like it was recorded inside a TV with no signal, bro. Simple Things, the final track, oh my god. It does a decent job of leaving the album off on a generally pretty positive note. You know, the ending message I get from this track is like, no matter what hardships you face, the ultimate goal should always be to strive to achieve peace for yourself and your loved ones. You know, a very positive ending moment. He details numerous relationship problems too on this track that he's been through in some of these verses, which could tie in a little bit maybe to those claims he had recently of like physical abuse or something that were thrown his way recently. But you know, that's none of my business. I'ma just yeah, you know, moving on from there. Overall, yeah, this is a pretty boring album, and yeah, nowhere near as fruitful and as characterful as the previous 3 Good Music albums that I've already talked about in this video. And holy shit, I think we're done. I could not be happier to stop talking about this fucking album because it's really that boring. Thank God I can finally move on to something new. There is no way that whatever comes next could possibly be more mind-numbingly boring than this fucking album. Okay, Teyana Taylor. Oh, why was this the one with 8 tracks? You couldn't have given 8 tracks to Daytona or K.T.S.E. You had to make this the 8 track. Okay, thank you, Kanye, you piece of shit. So yeah, this is actually, surprisingly enough, significantly more boring than Nasir, in my opinion. I think the idea of listening to this album again is quite haunting. In fact, just the sheer level of boredom, the sheer level of boredom that this album put me through was honestly quite hellish at points. Like, it actually kind of made me yearn to relive the full 12 hours I spent with Corey Feldman. Okay, maybe no, that's a bit of an example. that's a bit. Thematically, this album is unbearably shallow, and nothing is executed interestingly either. Teyana's voice is nice, but it holds absolutely no weight to me at all. She has got range, she can definitely hit notes really well, and there are some points where she is pushing her vocal ability to do something genuinely impressive at points on this album, but there was never a moment where I felt like I was really interlocked with what she was saying or really connected to her or how she presented herself on these tracks. There was just no sense of identity on this album to me. I think it opened up decently, I guess, with the song No Manners. It's a very short little intro track right here. It opens pretty sensually with Teyana very endearingly singing to her husband, expressing her love for him, and it's a very sultry track. The strings on here sound pretty decent. Not a bad intro cut, sets the tone pretty appropriately, and the album's themes of love and intimacy are just displayed right out the gate. But yeah, the content on this thing is typically just not that engaging at all. The song Gonna Love Me is just kind of about fighting through the struggles of a relationship in order to reach the end goal of love. And then we have the song Issues, which is about confessing your flaws to your lover in hopes to find common ground with them so that you can then grow as people. We have Three-Way, which is about three-way, legit, straight up is about three-way. We have WTP, or Work This Pussy, which is about working this pussy. Hell yeah, it's about. There's also the track Hurry, which is just a very seductive track about sex, pretty much. We have Rose in Harlem, which is about her come up from Harlem, the Rose in question, and the title being herself. Never Would Have Made It is another pretty endearing track towards her. This song is sort of all about independence, it seems, and how, you know, there have been times where she's felt like she's made decisions off the back of other people, but she's really, truly, fully content with who she is and whatnot. It's a very sort of empowering song, which I definitely appreciate. It's pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, yeah, artistically, musically, this album doesn't execute any of these themes in any compelling way whatsoever. Let me just read you some of these lyrics, and you'll see what I'm fucking talking about. Fighting to keep us together, hope it's worth a try. You ain't always been an angel, but heaven's on our side. I got my demons too, I know just how you feel. You can be real with me, and that's why you're still with me. Can't hide behind the carrots on a diamond ring. I didn't even care if you lied to me. Like, it's not, like, I'm sorry, but this is just, like, this writing is, like, unbelievably basic. And you can have straightforward lyrics and sell it in a way that hits home. Like, a good example I can think of up top. Kind of. Yeah, okay. Like, listen to the song 5 Years by Bjork from the album Homogenic, right? There's a point, I think she's talking about how she hates when people want to express love to her, but they end up not being able to handle the relationship or something like that. A pretty straightforward lyrical idea, you know, it's not deep or anything, but the way she fucking performs it, she is putting literally every shred of her being into that performance, it's like ridiculously powerful. It's so evocative, even if the lyrical idea at that particular part of the track isn't really all that much to wrap your head around. Again, it's pretty straightforward, but it's just the performance that kills, that just carries the whole thing. Tiana never once has a moment like that. You know, her voice is just nice. It's just pleasant. It sounds pretty. She hits the notes fine. Musically, this thing is pretty smooth and sultry and R&B-ish and jazzy and soulful. It's nothing you haven't heard before fucking a million times. Like, this is a really safe album. And I'm actually really glad we had that final track, Work This Pussy, because I just needed something to happen on this fucking album that I wasn't expecting. It was completely random and went against everything else that happened on the album, but it was something I did not expect, so props there. This album was not in any way, like, grating to listen to. It was just very uneventful and very unexciting. It's definitely the least interesting. I was trying to find a better word than interesting, but I'm just terrible right now. Yeah, it's the most boring one, for the reasons I have been stating in this video, at this part, in this review so far. I can't talk. This video is, did I mention this video is killing me? Yeah, it's fucking killing me. Let's just get this done. I've talked about all of them. I've given my thoughts on all of them now. I think we're set. Let's review, let's rate them. Sorry, I already reviewed them. Rate them, let's rank them, let's go. All right, moving on to the rating and ranking. Okay, everyone, so yeah, let's just take a look through the 5 now. We have Daytona, Yay, K.T.S.E, G.O.O.D, Nas, Down Taylor. Alright, so the worst is actually probably Yay, for me. Yay was probably the one I found the most enraging, or got the least enjoyment from, or the least satisfaction from. It was just way too fucking half-baked and shoddy, and not remotely engaging at all. And yeah, I'm feeling a 3 out of 10 on that one. Probably the worst Kanye album yet. Yeah, don't like it, not for me. Moving on from there, Taylor would be the next one. Yeah, again, pretty boring, pretty fucking faceless and shit, you know. Musically, probably the least exciting. I'd say musically this is the least exciting. I think just sonically, listening to this thing, it's the most predictable one here. But yeah, I mean, it's not as topical as the Nas album. It's not as you know, fucking adventurous as K.T.S.E Ghost. Obviously, it's just the most middle ground one. But I could probably enjoy it passively in the background or something, which I don't think I could do with Yay. So I'm going to give this the edge. I'm going to go with a 4 though, because I don't really like it. Next up it is Nas, feeling a 5 on this one. Yeah, again, Nas is rapping some of his least impressive rapping, some of the least impressive rapping of his career on this album. And the beats, again, they sound like they were fucking recorded in a sardine tin. So yeah, I'm going to go with a 5 on that. Next up, it is of course Daytona. Again, just the lack of creativity is what held this thing back. I do think though, production-wise and rapping-wise, there's a lot to appreciate and enjoy here. If you're a rap fan, if you're a hip-hop head, you're probably gonna fucking dig this thing. And even though it's not all that cutting edge or super boundary pushing and a bit safe, it was definitely entertaining in my opinion. So I'm gonna go with a pretty strong 7. It was good. I liked it. And the best is absolutely K.T.S.E Ghost, without question. It's without question K.T.S.E Ghost. By fucking far. One of the most adventurous and fruitful rap albums this year, and I think it just does so much in its short runtime. I think it does the most with its short runtime out of all of these albums. I think it just does a great job at proving that you don't need the album doesn't need to be like fucking 18 tracks an hour long if you want to just build a world. Like, you know, some albums, they're always trying to create an atmosphere, you know, build a vibe, you know, establish a personality. And I think it's albums like K.T.S.E Ghosts that prove that you don't need to do that. You know, in just 23 minutes, this album has a really unique identity that sets itself apart from other rap albums, you know? So that's pretty impressive. And I think each track has its own distinct personality and tone as well, you know? And all the rapping is solid, the lyrics are there, it's very hopeful and inspiring, production is consistently creative. Yeah, man, big fan of this. So I'm going with a strong 8 on this. Strong 8. So those are my thoughts on all the good music albums. I fucking did it! We did it! Recording done. Hell yeah. Man, I am fucking glad. That's great. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the time you spent watching this video, and if you did, consider maybe checking out some other content, maybe subscribing to the channel or something. That would be much appreciated, man. But yeah, it's all you, whatever you feel like doing. But yeah, I mean, just have a nice day. That's all I can ask of you, is just have a fucking nice day. Because, you know, time is precious. Where do I go with this outro? I don't know, but yeah, yeah, sick. That's everything. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!